Welcome to podcasts, recorded live at the Center for Spiritual Living in Portland, Oregon. We have many programs, classes, and workshops developed just for our online audience. To find out more, go to our website at cslportland.org and look under the Online tab. Our mission is to open hearts, ignite minds, and make a difference. If you'd like to support our center and its video podcast, you can donate online at cslportland.org/donate. Allow us to become part of your extended spiritual community. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are most welcome at the Center for Spiritual Living.
But hi, everybody. I'm Reverend Bonnie. Oh, my shirt's up over that little microphone thing. There we go. I'm Reverend Bonnie Anderson, Andy's wife, and we're delighted to be here. We haven't been here in a long time. It's way before COVID, and we're delighted to be back. I was just talking to Reverend Larry the other day, and he sends his love to all of you, and he sounds like he's doing really well, he and Daniel. So the topic this morning is what lies below the surface. There's a beautiful quote in the Science of Mind reading today, the Science of Mind magazine, the daily reading, that says by Stephen Hawking, "Remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist. Be curious." So the superpower for this month the theme for this month for January for Centers for Spiritual Living is the superpower of curiosity. And I think that's great. I mean, can you imagine curiosity as a character, one of the Marvel characters, maybe with a cape on, the superpower of curiosity, maybe sparkly. I don't know what they'd be dressed like, but someone can draw that. I think it would be great. So we invite you to open your eyes and see with curiosity. It's such a wonderful thing. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "I think at a child's birth, if a mother could ask a fairy godmother to endow it with the most useful gift, that gift would be curiosity." You know, it allows us to look at things in a new way. And it allows us to not judge so much, because we can look at someone maybe who's irritating us and say, "Oh, I wonder what they're feeling. I wonder what their life is like." To stand in their shoes, to just look at things in a different way. We have good friends, Lisa Ferraro and Etika Luckett, who passed away a few years ago, sadly, but they're New Thought musicians, very talented. They have a CD called Awe, and they had T-shirts made up that said, "If you're not in awe, you're not paying attention." And I love that. If you're not in awe, because when we really pay attention, when we're curious, we see so much more than we think we do. Curiosity opens many doors and allows us to look at things we may not have even noticed, we may not realize that are there. It allows us, it causes us to look at cells in a microscope. In a microscope, you look at a cell in a new way, or to dive down into the deepest parts of the ocean and see the mysterious creatures that live there, the fish that live there. All sorts of things are opened up by curiosity. It encourages us to study the masters like Yogananda, Jesus, Buddha, Ernest Holmes. A lot of us are here because we're curious. A lot of us in this teaching are curious to know more. So the topic this week is to look below the surface. Look below the surface. And when we do that, it inspires awe. This superpower of curiosity wants us always to know more. It's like a teacher of ours, of Andy's and mine, Dr. J. Scott Neal used to say, the more you know, there's more to know. Because you can just keep going and going and going. It's never ending. But looking below the surface, looking at maybe ordinary things that we look at every day that we don't notice. And it requires slowing down. Sometimes that's hard for us to do, isn't it? To slow down, become quiet and still. Years ago, when Andy and I were living in San Francisco, our boys were little, and I was working. We were both working, and life was kind of crazy. I wonder now how we ever did that. But I took a day. I needed a down day, so I drove by myself to the coast to Pescadero, and went to a campground that we used to camp at. And in the morning, I just sat on a picnic table in the woods and just was still. And it felt so good to do that. And as I sat there just looking at the trees and the branches, the sun shifted slightly. And when it did that, it shone down on the trees and illuminated all these spider webs that were in the trees all over. There were so many of them. It was magical. It was like a fairy came out and lit up these spider webs. And they were always there, but I couldn't see them. I think there's so much there that we don't always see. I discovered these beautiful cards called Earth Warrior cards. A woman named Alana Fairchild did them. And she said this: experiencing the sacred means going beyond the mundane, day-to-day world and opening your heart and mind to your soul. Allow the simple beauty of nature, of human kindness, of divine love to seep deep into your soul, infusing it like a sacred tea. Just when we slow down and breathe and really look, we see so much more. Our brains can't even, the way sight works, is it's the image is actually upside down that we perceive, and our brain turns it right side up. Also, we don't perceive everything that's out there. It's based on what we expect to see, our beliefs are. So we can't even see everything that's there. But when we slow down and enter a more meditative state, we can see the things that have been hidden. When my father died, we were all at his cabin on a river in Michigan, and we were all there around him. And the next day, I was sitting out on a bench by the river, contemplating what was life like without, what's the world like without my dad? And so I said, God, I want a sign that he's still around. Give me a sign, but I wanted like a airplane to go by with a banner. I wanted a big sign that I couldn't miss. And spirit doesn't always work like that. It's a little more subtle. So as I sat there, I looked up in a tree and I saw a red cardinal. It's a beautiful bird, and it always reminded me of my dad because he loved them, and he always had bird feeders. So I was looking at this beautiful red cardinal up there and thinking, maybe that's my dad. Maybe that's a sign. And I looked away for a minute. When I looked back, it was gone. And I went, it's gone. I lost it. But then in a moment, a tree moved away that was in front of it, and the bird was always there. I couldn't see it because a branch had moved in front of it, but it was always there. So there was my sign that my dad, I couldn't see him, but he's still here. He's still here. I still wanted the airplane to get me, but I began to believe that was my sign. So sometimes we're afraid to go below the surface. I don't know if you've ever been swimming in the lake or the ocean and out in the water, and then you think, "Ooh, I wonder what's below me," And then you hear the theme from Jaws, and quickly swim to shore. But yet, say you're in Hawaii swimming and if you put a mask on and looked, you'd see beautiful tropical fish and the beauty that's there. But we sometimes fear the unknown. Or it's things that we don't want to face in our lives. There's things going on that we don't want to become still and think about them. But when we understand that love is always for us, that God is everywhere, I don't believe there's any evil force in the universe trying to get us. There's no enemy out there. It's all good. It's all God. It's all beauty. And when we really embody that, we become less afraid to look at the things that we may not want to look at. We remember that the universe is always saying yes to us. And it only desires our good. The universe is just there, ready to put into action your dreams and desires. Curiosity is a gift from the universe. It really is. So let's celebrate it. This weekend, we're kind of celebrating. Andy and I, last week, it was our 44th wedding anniversary, if you can believe that. It's hard to believe it's been that long. So we went for the first time to the Portland Japanese Gardens, and it was, awe-inspiring and beautiful, and, the creativity and the artist that was displaying there had many different mediums. It was beautiful. He had big ceramic things sitting in a pool of water and big faces, and then he would have on the wall there'd be a wispy, like a feather drawing, or like Andy was intrigued by, there was just a box with a hole in the middle, And he said, I wonder what he was thinking when he did that. But, when you unleash creativity, you get lots of good things. And so I read the description of him. His name is Jun Kaneko. And he says, if my intuition tells me to do something, I don't ask questions. Beyond that, I just do it. Do we trust our intuition? Do we trust that? I don't always, but when I do, it usually works out pretty well. And he said this, when I am painting, suddenly I arrive at a feeling that this is it. It's done. 1 second before that, I would never have guessed the painting would be finished in the next moment. He listened to himself, to his soul, and he just knew when it was done. I thought that was very inspiring. Now, one way to look deeper is to look up. There's Emma Curtis Hopkins taught that looking up can be a way for us to get into another higher consciousness, another frame of mind. Maybe some of you are familiar with this. And I've been practicing this, looking up to your good, and not looking up to God, please God save me, or to the God in the sky. Looking up to a higher consciousness, a higher vibration. And she suggests that you look up 10 minutes every day at a 45-degree angle. So you're not looking up like that. It's like 45 degrees from the horizon, like this, and you just look up. And I invite you to try this. It's a very powerful spiritual practice that I discovered just recently. And when you do that, it's impossible to think about your problems. It's sort of like a blank state. But yet, Spirit will sometimes speak to you, or I'll find that I have a smile on my face. I feel better afterwards. Or I have something that I'm struggling with, and I look up and I get an immediate answer from Spirit. And maybe not be one I want to hear, but I get an answer. So after you look up, you will rise up. What happens is a sense of peace comes over you when you look up to in that angle. Thoughts that you were struggling with become more clear, and answers come. And you turn away from what bothers you. You're turning away from the worries. Because when we're in the regular frame of mind, or when we're looking down, we're involved, I know. I have an endless loop sometimes that goes around, like, things that bug me about. Sean knows my son Ben, and he's wonderful and glorious, and there's things about him that bug me. So I start to think, Ben should be doing this with his kids, and I'm in that endless loop, and I look up, and it's like Spirit says, all is well. All is well. It takes us out of that mundane way of thinking into a higher vibration. Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis teaches. I'm sorry, I'll talk forever if I don't keep an eye on the clock. So, Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis in Seattle, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, teaches this practice, and she tells a story of their center. They had a beautiful multi-million-dollar property on Sandpoint Way, and through some things that happened, they had to sell it. There was a balloon payment due. Banks weren't loaning to churches at that time, and if they didn't make the payment, they'd lose the property. They'd just lose it. They had to default. So they were trying to find. All this was going on about how was this going to happen, and there was a contingency on that property when they bought it that it had to be sold to an educational institution. So that made it more difficult to sell. It wasn't selling, and they were getting nervous. So she looked up. And when she looked up, she heard the words, "Call Children's Hospital." She didn't know anything about it, where that idea came from, but she knows enough to follow it. So she called Children's Hospital, and they were looking for a property just like that because they were nearby for their teaching nurses. So she put them in touch with the realtor. They bought the property, and then they had the cash. They bought a beautiful place somewhere else in Seattle, and it all worked out. But it came, that idea came out of the blue. So that's what can happen when we surrender to that higher vibration. And strangely enough, there's actually been multidisciplinary research about looking up. And they say looking up can change your brain, your body, your relationships, your perspective, your sense of identity and belonging. It brings a state that's ripe for creativity and complex problem solving. And there's been studies, Google it, there's studies. By looking up, I mean, who knew? It's really powerful. So when we're in an ordinary mode of thinking, when we're not looking below the surface or up for answers, we can get into the feeling that, it's impossible to do some things. Andy's got a wonderful song called "Nothing is Impossible" that you're going to hear after this. But, we think I have an illness, or a friend has an illness. It's impossible to cure. Or it's impossible for me to get out of debt, or to create love, or to find a partner, whatever it is that you might think is impossible. When you begin to look at things with more curiosity, you look up to a higher vibration, everything is possible. Everything is possible in God. Everything's God. God, everything's possible. So it helps us to remember that, to have the life of our dreams. And when you do that, we're actually, they don't say that in that study, but we're raising our vibration. We're going up to a state of higher consciousness. Now, I'll tell you, when I had this idea, when I was working on this talk, because the title is "To Look Below the Surface," and I'm thinking, well, how can I talk about looking up when I'm supposed to be talking about what lies below the surface? And I looked up, and Spirit said, "Do it." So that's what'll happen sometimes, is things don't seem to make sense. When we follow our intuition, have you ever had an urge for your intuition that didn't seem to make any sense at all? We all have. So I invite you to try looking up for 10 minutes each day. When you do your morning practices, or if you don't do that, just try it, 10 minutes. I put the timer on my phone or on my Alexa, and Andy and I sit there, and he doesn't do this. You have to try it, honey. He closes his eyes. I look up. And be willing to use the superpower of creativity, of curiosity, rather. We'll create both. But curiosity, to look at things in a new way, to not judge others, become curious about them. Andy and I taught parenting classes years ago, and Andy loved the phrase, "Isn't that interesting?" So, your teenager sneaks out at night and drinks beer instead of going, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Isn't that interesting? I wonder why they did that." Isn't that interesting? I wonder why my toddler, always puts a tantrum when I go to the grocery store. That's being curious about things. Rather than saying it's bad, it's wrong, just opening up that channel of creativity, of curiosity. Using the superpower of curiosity. And be willing to look below the surface. See with new eyes where everything is possible. And I'm going to end in a minute, so you may want to just go right into that song, Andy. You got offering before that? Oh, never mind. So in closing, Rumi said, we've been walking in the surf, holding our robes up, when we should be naked, diving under, deeper under. Thank you, everyone.
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you happen to be in the Portland, Oregon area, we'd love to have you visit in person. The Portland Center for Spiritual Living is located at 6211 Northeast Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Our inspirational service is at 11 a.m. every Sunday. We also have many programs, classes, and workshops developed just for our online audience. To find out more, go to our website at cslportland.org and look under the Online tab. We have a variety of content dedicated specifically for our podcast listeners. Our mission is to open hearts, ignite minds, and make a difference. If you'd like to support our center and its podcasts, you can donate online at cslportland.org/donate. Our website is also the place to learn more about what's going on at the center or to contact us. Allow us to become part of your extended spiritual community. Wherever you are in your spiritual journey, you are most welcome at the Center for Spiritual Living.